So if they wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, they would have to start thinking about what they were thinking about and change it. Starting to become conscious of their unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. Now here's the key. They have to look at the emotions that they've memorized that keep them anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in their future. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. In other words, a wealthy person doesn't feel lack. You can't bring lack into your future. You know, a sick person doesn't feel desperation. They feel wholeness. And so then, by re-identifying with the future, and then instead of your past, present reality, is very, very easy conversation to have. Mm-hmm. But actually doing it requires a tremendous amount of awareness. And that awareness means then that you have to stay conscious and pay attention to who you're being all the time. And you can't let any thought slip by your awareness that's going to cause you to return back to the old self. You can't begin to react emotionally to people and things in your life that cause you to feel like the old self. You can't talk and complain and blame and make excuses or go back to old habits and expect your future to show up. You have to maintain that state for a period of time so that your body catches up, because the body and brain live in the past. So it takes a certain amount of repetition and a certain amount of consciousness, a certain amount of will finally arrive there. And I'm happy to say that it's possible. 95 to 99% are created from lifestyle. You can take two identical twins, same exact gene expression, same exact genome. One dies at 55, the other one dies at 81. Why? They're in a different environment, or their perception of the environment. Right. So now it's not that the gene is a parts list of possibilities. Right. So now, here's the point. If a person is perceiving the environment or in an environment where they're constantly living in fear or anxiety or anger or aggression or frustration, then it makes sense then that those emotions would influence certain thoughts. And certain thoughts would make certain feelings or certain emotions. Well, if you're living by the same emotions every single day, it's the environment that signals the gene. The end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So your body is objective. If you're living in fear, whether there's any fearful conditions in your environment, your body's believing it's in an environment where it needs to feel fear. So then the person then keeps signaling the same gene because they're feeling the same emotion. They're responding to the same environmental condition. They're signaling the same gene. You keep making the same protein. You keep signaling the same gene over time. It's like taking a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. All of a sudden the body starts making a cheaper protein. The gene down-regulates, and now the body's moving out of balance. So then here's the question. If you're thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, creating the same experiences that produce the same emotions, and then those same emotions influence your very same thoughts, then your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and your gene expression is going to be equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality.
I love that.
So if you're going to change your life, change your personal reality, you got to change your personality. You got to start changing your thoughts. You got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and say, do I really want to think this? Like, you become the shepherd of your thoughts, the gardener of your mind. You start to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors and say, my goodness, how am I speaking? How am I acting? You start looking at emotions that you live by every day and say, my goodness, I didn't even know it was guilt. It just feels like me. Or lack. And now the person's becoming conscious of their unconscious part of themselves. And the more conscious we become of the unconscious self, the less unconscious we go during the day. So it begs the question, new thoughts that lead to new choices that lead to new behaviors, new behaviors create new experiences produce new emotions are the information coming from the environment, they signal new genes and there's evolution. So now we upregulate the gene, you start making a healthy protein. The immune system starts upregulating and all of a sudden it makes new antibodies. Why? Because the body's back in growth and repair and out of survival.
In the unseen, that's a big one. That's a very big one and a very important one. Already feeling it and finding ourselves in a place where we already are embodying embodying all those qualities, embodying feeling that reality, and then the brain start changing, shifting, and being able to, how does this work? What's the dynamic? Tell us again.
Well, let's make it really simple, okay? Thoughts are the language of the brain. Mm-hmm. Feelings are the language of the body. Mm-hmm. So the currency of thought is what creates a certain level of mind. The currency of feeling, then, has everything to do with experience, okay? So knowledge is for the mind, experience is for the body. So your brain has networks of neurons that are arranged in certain patterns based on things you learn intellectually and things you've experienced in your life. So your forebrain is the builder, it's the designer, it's the CEO. And when you begin to speculate possibilities, when you start to think about a better way to do something or something you want to experience or something you want to do or some future event, it's an amazing phenomenon because researchers are beginning to show that not only do we remember a past, but the brain actually can remember a future. And so how does it do that? Well, because the forebrain has connections to all other parts of the brain, it can take a little bit of that knowledge from a specific neural network and a little bit of experience and another neural network of knowledge and another neural network of experience, and it can seamlessly piece it together to create a new level of mind. And then your brain gets a picture or an image, and then you transfix your mind on that image, and those neurons string into place that begin to fire and wire together. And every time you remind yourself of what you want to experience, you're reinforcing the circuitry in your brain to begin to install the hardware for you to actually experience that future event. In other words, the brain already looks like it's already had the event. Now that's super cool because it really says then that we're remembering a future potential. Now, feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, and we can remember experiences better because we can remember how they feel. So when you're in the midst of an experience and you're seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling and hearing and you're immersed in the environmental cues, there is a rush of information that causes the brain to pattern into specific neural networks, and then there's a very strong emotional quotient that the brain releases to the body. So then, if feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, then, is it possible then to tune into that future potential and put so much of our attention on it till it's real? Mm-hmm. And the end product of that experience in our own mind is an emotion, and we begin to feel how that event would actually take place or feel ahead of the actual experience. Now, we're no longer relying on the external world to change our internal chemistry, and then when we feel different, we look to see who or what caused it. What we're saying is now is that we're giving thanks ahead of the actual experience, or we're falling in love to the point that the body, as the unconscious mind, is getting the signal before the actual environmental experience. The body does not know the difference between the event in reality that produces the emotion and the emotion you create by yourself. Now, here's the key. Most people use their senses to define reality. We all do. But the quantum model says we're going to use our mind to define reality, and we're going to convince our body emotionally that that future event has already happened. Now, when your mind and body are working together, when your thoughts and feelings are aligned, you're in a state of being. And that state of being is what that flow is all about. Now, some people would say, oh, that's nonsense, or that's so unrealistic. Well, it is nonsense. It's beyond the senses. And it is unrealistic because it isn't a reality yet. But you've already experienced it enough times that you can surrender now and let go, because you already can trust that somehow it's going to happen. You don't know how or when, and that should never be your job, because the moment you try to figure out how or when, you go back to that old identity trying to control the outcome. But if you understand that the quantum model says that there's an intelligence that will organize the event in a way that's right for you, and you've already experienced it enough times till you feel it on a cellular level, then you are in the state of experiencing it in terms of being it. And then when you're in that state of being, that is a personality. Your state of being is your personality, and your personality creates a new personal reality. So here's the beauty behind it. You can let go now and surrender to some greater intelligence and and be tickled by the outcome, because you can't be tickled unless you don't know when it's going to happen or where it's going to happen. But the physiology of tickling says that you can surrender and not know when or how, and you'll be tickled. So the universe wants to tickle us in a certain way. Imagine how many things you could get done if you had an infinite amount of time. An infinite number of possibilities. That's the quantum. Now, in the quantum, there's nothing structural, there's nothing material, there's nothing physical, there's no form, right? So what is it made of? It's made of energy, frequency, vibration, thought, consciousness, information, and every thought in that realm has a frequency. So all possibilities already exist. You don't have to create the possibility. In fact, all you have to do is become aware that it exists. Mm-hmm. The moment you do that, you're changing the thought and producing a different frequency. Now, if the person is astute enough to feel the frequency of the thought in the quantum and not wait for the experience to happen, but the thought of abundance would produce the feeling of abundance. For most people in three-dimensional reality, the thought of abundance produces the lack of not having it. That's why they're trying to create it, right? But in the quantum, you got to feel it in order to experience it, okay? So as you get closer and closer to that point, that source, that singularity, pure love, the 0 point field, whatever you want to call it, universal mind, that the creator, pure consciousness, as you get closer and closer to it, the closer you get to it, the more bliss, the more love, the more ecstasy you feel, then you're no longer creating from lack or separation. The closer you get to it in the process of creation, the shorter the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it, between the cause and the effect, from one point of consciousness and the other point of consciousness. So then people can create from the field instead of from matter if they have a coherent brain and a coherent heart, and they actually can send a coherent signal out and feel the emotion ahead of the experience. Then those synchronicities and opportunities that they're creating from fifth dimensional reality requires doing less. Somehow it's drawn to us, or it comes to us. It comes in ways that we least expect, that surprises us. Like, whoa, where did that come from? And now what does that do? It proves to you that you're the creator of your life, that instead of the victim of your life. And what's a victim? You say to someone, why are you feeling this way? What's wrong with you today? And they say, I am this way because of that person, because of that circumstance. What they're really saying is that person or circumstance is actually controlling my feelings and controlling my thoughts. Well, anything that's controlling my feelings and my thoughts, I'm victim to, right? So it makes sense then that when things are good, you feel good, and when things are bad, you feel bad, right? So when you start changing the way you think and feel, and it starts producing outcomes in your life, you're going to believe you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. And the hardest part about all of this is just making the time to do it.
Well, you just landed on, I have two things I want to ask in mind, but the first was, why is it so damn hard? Like, why is it so hard to get to that place where you can, whether it be believe that leads to knowing, like what are those big hurdles for people to get over? And, one is making the time to do it, but then there's like being in it and actually in it being hard. Like I struggle with that sometimes, where you really to embody the feeling and to really like get yourself there. It feels like there's so many blockages. It's a difficult thing to achieve.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so much easier to forget this information than to remember it. I think we're wired, so wired, for such limitation, and as I said, my belief about human potential has changed so dramatically. So the first thing I think is so valuable is this information, and the right information. Sure. We do our best to combine quantum physics with neuroscience, with neuroendocrinology, with psychoneuroimmunology, mind-body connection, epigenetics, protein metabolism, cellular biology, electromagnetism. Why? Because if knowledge is power, knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. So every time you learn something new, you're forging connections in your brain, but the research shows if you don't repeat it, you don't review it, you don't think about it, they prune apart within hours or even days. So if learning is making those connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining them. Okay, so if you can build a model of understanding with people And nothing is left to conjecture. Nothing is left to superstition. Nothing's left to dogma. Mm-hmm. And they can learn that information, and instead of getting on their cell phone and scrolling through their social media or looking at whatever, or watching TV or getting distracted, if they learn that information and they have the opportunity to teach it back to somebody, and they begin to share that information right in the event, right?
Like so the retreats, yeah. When you give information to people, you're like, okay, now talk about it to each other. And we stop and we talked about it, and it become, if you don't understand the information well enough, you can't explain it.